More families are living together again, but most homes still aren't designed for multi-generational living. Adult kids move back home, parents get older, housing gets more expensive, and suddenly the house that worked 10 years ago just doesn't work anymore. This project started as an exploration into accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and how small home design might help solve some very real problems that families are dealing with right now. Because I think there's a big difference between living together and living well together. And honestly, I think a lot of residential architecture still assumes everybody follows the same path in life forever. But life changes. Families change, and maybe our houses need to become a little more flexible too. So instead of designing a giant multi-generational house where everybody shares the same kitchen, hallway, and living room all day, I wanted to explore something smaller and quieter. A backyard home that still feels independent. Not a temporary guest suite, not just like a rental unit or a tiny house experiment. A real ADU, designed for privacy, flexibility, and long-term living. But I'm curious what you think about this. Because I honestly feel like housing keeps drifting into two extremes. Either complete isolation or zero personal space. And neither one feels particularly healthy to me. One thing I kept thinking about while working on this ADU was how a lot of homes fail in ways that don't show up just like on the floor plan. Not because like the house is ugly, and not because the square footage is too small, but because there's nowhere to like mentally retreat. Everything overlaps now. Open kitchens, open living rooms, open workspaces. And I know open floor plans became popular for really good reasons, but I also think people need moments of separation too. You can love your family and still need privacy. Honestly, maybe especially then. So instead of focusing only on maximizing square footage, I started thinking more about emotional stability. How does a home actually feel to live in every day? One thing that became really important in this modern ADU design was creating a transition between shared life and private life. Even a short walk outside changes the psychology completely. You're not just stepping into another bedroom down the hall anymore. You're arriving somewhere. And that small shift, it can help create independence, not isolation, just enough separation to preserve dignity and ownership over a space. And honestly, I think that matters more than people realize with multi-generational housing. So from there, I started translating the sketches into a real residential floor plan and a 3D model. And lately, I've been really interested in compact home design that still feels like calm and functional, where it's not cramped and hyper minimal. I'm not trying to squeeze 20 functions into one room, but I want just enough. Enough light, enough privacy, enough openness to be able to breathe. I don't know, maybe this is just me getting older, but I think I'm becoming less interested in impressive houses and more interested in homes that just kind of reduce your stress. I also tried to keep the architecture itself pretty restrained. Simple forms, warm materials with large windows facing towards the landscape, because honestly I think projects like this work better when they feel grounded and livable instead of like overly dramatic. The best residential architecture, in my opinion, usually doesn't constantly demand attention. It just like supports your daily life. And I think that becomes even more important in a small ADU where every space has to work really hard. One thing I keep coming back to while designing homes lately is this idea that architecture affects the relationships more than we want to admit. A stressful house creates stressful interactions with the people in it. A noisy layout can create tension. A home with no boundaries will slowly wear people down over time. And honestly, I think a lot of modern home design focuses too heavily on appearance and not enough on how those spaces support your real life. Especially now, when more families are dealing with aging parents, adult children having to move back home because of rising housing costs and multi-generational living situations. So this ADU, it became less about designing a small building and more about designing healthier boundaries between people of multiple generations. So this became my attempt at a modern accessory dwelling unit that feels independent without feeling disconnected. A compact backyard home where someone could make coffee in the morning, work quietly, read, have friends over, maybe sit outside, but still feel like they have ownership over their own life, while still remaining connected to family nearby. And honestly, I think we're going to see more flexible housing solution like this over the next decade, not because people necessarily want to live together forever, but because life is becoming more complicated, maybe more expensive, and definitely less predictable. And maybe our houses need to adapt to that reality a little better than they do right now. I also think there's something interesting about treating small homes and ADUs as meaningful architecture instead of just leftover space. A lot of accessory dwelling units feel temporary, like overflow. But what if they were intentionally designed to support an important phase of life? Not just rental income or a guest house, but real living, real independence, real flexibility. I don't know, maybe that's idealistic. But I think architecture gets more interesting when it responds to actual human problems instead of just the trendy stuff. Anyway, this was my attempt at exploring a modern ADU for multi-generational living and independent spaces. And honestly, I'd be curious what you think. Do you think accessory dwelling units and multi-generational housing are going to become more common? Would you ever want a backyard home like this for your aging parents or adult children or even yourself someday? Or do you think people function better with more separation entirely? Either way, thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious and design with intent.